All right, it looks like we're live. Hi, everyone. This is Dave from Candid. We're doing a Candid Shop Talk for the week of Wednesday, May 27th. Thought we'd change up the format a little bit and do a listener mailbag. I think this could be a monthly thing. As the community's grown, we're getting a lot of really good feedback, and we're having a lot of really good conversations with people, yourself among them, who have questions, they have stories that they want to share. And I thought it was time to do sort of a cross-sectional survey and just kind of see what people are talking to. There's a survey on your way into the group that you probably filled out where it asks you a couple questions. What are your biggest challenges right now, and what are you doing that's working or not working? And I think the results that we've gotten, now that we have dozens and dozens of these, it's been fascinating. And so I sat down, went through them with a spreadsheet, and started figuring out kind of what the big trends were. And I think there's enough here that we can potentially talk for 20 to 30 minutes. By we, of course, I mean me sitting alone in a room, talking out into the internet. But let's dive in. Oh, and I've talked to a number of you individually, but I've anonymized all the stories. So feel free to chime in and say, that's me. I'm that person who had that great idea. But otherwise, these are your stories to tell. I'm simply going to be reporting back anonymized data points. Let's see, I can probably get rid of this title card. So the big thing that I noticed, there were a lot of trends. Everybody had something different to say, but I think by and large, there were 5 kind of very big things that jumped out as being the main issues on everybody's time and the main challenges that they're experiencing as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and associated lockdown. Far and away, number 1, decreased order volume. Number 2, how to do right by your team. Number 3, what to do about the trade shows, craft shows, and events that you've come to rely on for discovery and just running your business. 4, childcare. A lot of us seem to be parents, and that's definitely an issue right now. And 5, how and when to reopen. So I'll kind of go through these point by point and talk about some of the things people have said as being problematic, and some of the things that people are doing in response to these as coming up with fixes. So the big one, of course, is decreased order volume. That happens at the wholesale level, that happens at the retail level, that happens with suppliers, like all the way up and down the supply chain. One of the more noticeable things to anyone working in this part of the world, by which I mean the sector of wholesale, is just a decrease in order volume across the board. And that famous saying that we have nothing to fear but fear itself, I think a lot of that, when times are uncertain, the one thing that is certain is that people are going to be retracting and getting very conservative in their spending and not really launching into new things that might have had a tolerable risk profile in pre-pandemic times. And if you've got a store full of goods and suddenly it's unclear whether you're going to be open or closed for the next however many months, you're not looking to buy more. And that just ripples across and throughout the supply chain. This is very basic stuff that I'm sure everyone understands. But what's important to note, and something that we've noticed here a lot at Candid, because as we work at the nexus between retailers and wholesalers, we see this quite a lot, and we spend quite a lot of our time trying to tease this out, is that this business is cyclical. And there's kind of 2 different waves that are going on top of each other, and you have to kind of tease them apart. One is within any given business, you have your cycles. So you personally with your store or with your brand, you've got your production runs, your trade show schedule, you've got all these, collections that you put out at certain times. There's a lot of overlap often with you and other companies, but everybody's got their own slightly different business cycle. This happens on top of just the world cycle, which is somewhat unchangeable. The big trade show seasons that we see all the time, you've got your Februarys and your Augusts. And, we've been saying this a lot internally, but unless they cancel Christmas, come August, no matter what, people are going to need to start making the purchasing decisions so that they can have products for sale on, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and its whole attendant holiday smear of consumption. So it's, with the COVID pandemic, that's sort of a third cyclical wave that it gets, wave mechanics is a very complicated branch of math and physics, because it's very, very hard to look at what's happening today. You know, it's like trying to estimate traffic. Like, why is there traffic here? It's potentially the influx or the nexus of all these different waves, some of them going up, some of them going down. You can take a guess. I think the best thing you can do is just be aware of how chaotic the whole system is before trying to derive a pattern from it. But all of which is a very long-winded way of saying, some of this is just natural. Some of this is just what happens in May and April. There will be, I would be very, very surprised if there's not an uptick going into the summer as people start getting ready for holiday and realizing, you know, the confusion has died down a bit. I think everybody's still kind of waiting month to month to see what's going to happen, both regionally and globally, but things are going to pick up again for sure this summer. So what we always say around here, which I think is, I mean, we say it because it's the cornerstone of our business, the key to doing the number one most important thing in wholesale, whoever you are, whatever your role is in it, is building and maintaining relationships, because that's the baseline that's going to get you through. And so what's nice about that is that when there is one of these downtimes in ordering, and when your order volume is down, as long as you can figure out how to keep the lights on and stay on the proverbial horse, this is the perfect time for reaching out, strengthening those relationships, potentially building new ones, and just letting those, looks like we're getting a jump on our childcare topic. This is the time to really be focusing on that, because again, the opportunity cost is zero. All that time and energy you would have put into some marketing campaign to get people to buy today, you know, if you're not doing that or taking a break from that, or having to go out to the trade shows and be putting on appearances, just work on finding other ways to build and strengthen those relationships. That is the golden goose that is just going to keep laying eggs of success all over your yard, as long as it's alive. So that's a big one. I think getting into more of the nuanced specific solutions that people are finding to address this decreased order volume issue. Diversification of markets, and that could mean anything. That could mean pivoting, you know, if you're a textile business, going into mask making. If you're a distillery, you could go into hand sanitizer. Those are two very limited and specific examples, but that logic can be applied kind of across the board. Okay, you know, you've got this extra capacity, whatever isn't happening that you want to be happening right now, you know, figure out a way to make lemonade from that and reroute that capacity, those materials, that time and attention into something that does have more demand here than it did previously. Similarly, diversification of markets. One company we talked to, they were saying that one of their saving graces that helped them get through this is having customer bases kind of staggered across the world. So, you know, in a very grim sort of way of looking at the numbers, like as business was slowing down in China, they were, you know, making up for it in other places. And then when the epidemic hit Europe, you know, China was back online. And then this sort of following the waves, you know, if all your eggs are in one basket, you're going to be feeling what your market is feeling. And so if you're able to diversify globally, that's obviously a huge benefit towards riding out what I think is going to continue to be a cycle of regional flare-ups, you know, here and here and here. You're going to be noticing trends with the epidemic that I think are going to be affecting, you know, consumption and wholesale and retail operations with their attendant time lag. So diversification in both your offering and your marketplace. Drop shipping is a very specific one that has come up a lot. Drop shipping, if you're not familiar, is when you sell something you don't have and then somebody else ships it. And it's, you know, it can get a bit of a bad rap, in that it is, you know, it's the cornerstone of Tim Ferriss's fabled and oft maligned 4-hour work week, where you just get to sit in a hammock, checking your email, and people buy the thing from your store. It gets made overseas and shipped directly to the consumer without you ever having to touch it. There's a whole subculture of that I think has given some people pause when they think about drop shipping, but as a tool that you can use in your toolkit and an ingredient that you can sort of mix into your cooking, it is very powerful. And I think brands are very interested in it, in being able to sell through drop shipping, because if you have, let's say you've got 10 of these contraptions, If you have a drop shipping relationship with 10 stores, 10 stores can show that they have potentially 10 in stock. And as long as they're not, split second ordering at the speed of light, you don't run into stock out issues. It's a force multiplier for getting your brand in front of a lot of new customers. And the flip side of that is for the retailer, it lets you, increase basket sizes. It allows you to fill in some blanks that you maybe have on your shelves, just generally if you want to expand, or if a lot of the suppliers, or if any of the suppliers you've been working with have gone out of business or pressed pause on their operations. It's a very effective tool for filling in the gaps without requiring a big capital outlay up front. And there's a number of different ways to do it, but that is something that I've been surprised at how much it came up when I was asking people about what they've been doing and what they've been trying to do, until I thought about it a bit more, and it makes perfect sense. I think, the people we've talked to, the rule of thumb has been, if you can keep it to a quarter or less of your total products line as a retailer at being drop shipped, you're probably doing just fine. And it's a nice little, seasoning. There are companies that, well-respected companies whose entire business model is drop shipping. And it at that point, it's almost, it's like consignment. It's just another type of selling you can do. And if it's the right fit for you, it's the right fit for you. That I thought was very interesting. In tandem with that is this concept of just really making it easier for people to buy. And that goes for retailers and brands. I think on the retail side, we've all seen it, crazy screaming sidewalk deals, free delivery, all, this and that, just really bending over backwards to make sure that you're an easy place to shop has always worked. And it's especially important right now. We've found with brands, it's been interesting as we're working in the wholesale space, there are a lot of people who sell wholesale and they don't even necessarily use the word wholesale. It's, one brand we work with, their wholesale portal is entitled For Retail Partners. And it's not just a catalog you can shop from. It's downloadable, in-store displays, it's suggested email templates for reaching out and better selling the brand. And I think anything, it's the same principle, just up one layer on the supply chain. Anything you can do to make it easier for people to sell your product is going to make it easier for them to sell your product. And nobody cares about it as much as you do. So if you can take the time to craft the message exactly right and come up with the collateral and figure out a way to beam it over the internet in a way that other people can grab and use, then you're saving them a lot of work, and you're edging out other brands as you get ahead of them in the queue of saying, well, yeah, these guys, look, they gave me a whole POS display and, beautiful emails I can send out and a landing page and all this, like that really goes a long way. Again, these are universal tips that are especially coming to the forefront, I think, as people are trying to navigate how best to survive and thrive during this crisis. New advertising channels. We've talked about this a lot. We actually had a really good Candid Shop Talk a few weeks back with Jamie Harmon O'Connor from IFD, a really, really good digital agency that she's in the group. She's helped us set up the group, and she's just phenomenal at this stuff and figuring out what the channels are. I mean, I didn't do videos 6 months ago because that wasn't an effective, that for whatever reason didn't seem like the channel to reach people. And now it's part of our presence here on the internet, because when you can't come into a store, when you can't do house calls, when you can't go on site to do installations, people still need to connect. And that's just as important for brands and stores as it is for human beings. Partnerships as well. Anyone you can partner with, the collab has been a great opportunity for brands who want to work together, like, get this designer and this manufacturer and suddenly, double the mailing lists for outreach and potential appeal to new customers. That's always true, I think, especially as everyone and their dog is becoming a talk show host over Zoom or having a podcast or whatever. That's a great opportunity to cross-pollinate your markets in a way that at the end of the day, it's still all about connecting supply and demand curves. And if it's the right fit, it's not going to be annoying. It's going to be a welcome addition to your programming and a welcome merging of communities. Finally, the last thing on my list, new platforms, which we'll talk about again as we get to the trade show replacement stuff. But new platforms, just get out there and, there's as long as you're not violating anyone's terms of service, this is the time to be exploring new places to sell. And even if you're getting pennies on the dollar, if it's inventory that would otherwise just be sitting there, costing you money on your own shelves, it's a good time for experimenting. Also, people and platforms are tending to have very good deals right now. So the risk of trying something new is kind of at an all-time low. All right, so that was problem number one, decreased order volume. We could talk about that for days, but I think whatever that ramble was probably enough. Number two, doing right by your team. I was very happy to see that this was the number two most stated thing, because it just means we've got some pretty good people on our platform and here in our community. It's hard. It's hard to be powerless and at the mercy of an employer, whether you have a job tomorrow. It's also very hard to be the person who has to make those hard calls. Having been on both sides of that particular blade, it's no fun for anyone. And the things that people are doing, first and foremost, I think if you're in a position where you have people whose jobs you sort of hold in your hand, just being extremely open about the communication, letting them know, without spooking the troops, kind of letting people know how much money's in the bank, like what your projection is for the outlook, just so that you can help everybody make really good and thoughtful choices about their future and not be surprised when things happen. The classic story that I remember from last year was with the WeWork fiasco and their big IPO, and how their withholding of how precarious the company's financial situation was caused a lot of people to go out and buy bajillion-dollar homes on the eve of the IPO that then collapsed. Obviously, I don't have a full-size violin here. I'm playing for anyone whose $1 million house purchase fell through because of a failed IPO, but I think that's the type of thing in micro that you just don't want to have that blood on your hands. There's nothing bad can come from over communicating, because these are just, as every advertisement will tell you, these are unprecedented times. And the approaches, I think, to sharing high level company plans with everybody in the organization that have worked before and been appropriate before, this is a really good time to be even more open than usual. In that vein, I think if you do have to make the hard choices, there's obviously, everybody's situation is different, but a few things are somewhat universal. Unemployment right now is being subsidized and bolstered so that it is potentially a more livable wage than it was pre-COVID to find yourself on unemployment. However, that is offset by the fact that the system is very overloaded. It's a labyrinth of trying to get in. Who knows how long this is going to last? Something like 1 in 4 American workers are unemployed right now, which is just mind-blowing. And you do your own research on how comfortable you feel about the sustainability of all that. But if you don't need to go all the way down there, but you need to reduce people's hours, I know in Oregon there's a program called WorkShare. I would be very surprised if other states didn't have similar things that let the state come in, and it's sort of it's what you call like incremental unemployment. Basically, it's underemployment coverage. That I know companies who've done this. I know people who are on it. Again, as of May 27th, 2020, it seems to be working as an option. It's if you got enough money for 2 out of your 3 employees, it's probably better to reduce the hours of all 3 than to have to let one go. And tools like that help you make that kind of decision. The Small Business Administration, the SBA, has these programs: the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, the EIDL, and the PPP, the Payroll Protection Program, or Paycheck. I don't know. They've had a rocky start. We've talked about it here at the Candid with our shop talks quite a bit. If you want to go back and review those archives of how things were looking last month. It's interesting. There's still money in the program, but it's being administered in such a lumpy kind of way, and the rules for forgiveness keep changing, that it's, if you can get it, it's great. But the fact that it comes structured as a forgivable loan instead of a cash grant is a little, it's tricky. It's, you are if you have the option to not spend that money right away, I know a lot of people are just kind of sitting on it saying, this is great, but I'm going to wait until, I make sure I don't have to give it all back before I start spending it, which is obviously not the best way to deal with emergency funds, but there it is. It's something that's out there. And it did get refunded. But again, it hasn't been on my radar lately, and it's worth not putting all your hopes and dreams on that if you choose to apply today. And finally, just morale and employee mental health. It's the most important thing right now. I think once you can keep people actually on staff, like, that's not enough. You got to take care of them. We at Candid, have a very active Slack channel. We have meetings we probably don't need to have just because we actually need to have them. We're all in our homes going absolutely stir crazy, and it's really, really important to spend the extra time to just be as human as you can be with the humans on your team. We have people who are talking about some kind of projects that they did that were just like not super important projects, like rearranging the furniture in the office using social distancing measures, and picking out new plants and this stuff that's just kind of like, very unimportant, very trivial, and also unbelievably important, because morale is a thing. It takes, you gotta love something about what you're doing to keep enjoying doing it in complete isolation. So that's, again, none of this is rocket science, but these are tricks that people have been doing, and they seem to be working. So that's issue number 2, doing right by your team. So far we've done decreased order volume, doing right by your team. The third one, another thing that we talk about a whole lot over here, trade shows and events and discovery, and this concept of, it is a cyclical business, and a lot of those cycles are hung on these trade shows, which is where you come out of your zone, whatever it is, and everybody gets together, and you see new products, you make purchasing orders, you build new relationships, you strengthen existing ones. But most important, there's just this kind of miasma of like the stuff that you can't really put a name to that gets done there. Like, you meet people in the lobby or at the airport with the bags and say, oh, you're going to New York now? Yeah, me too. And 1 in 100 of those winds up being someone you work with for years or decades. You see you see things, you just see trends in collections, you see kind of the state of the union, you get to present yourself. It's a very, very crucial part of, for sure the apparel and home goods industries, but so many others that's just, it's gone. The next major round of these are coming up in August and late July. Again, it's unclear what they're going to look like. I think even if they are reopened, it's just going to be a very different experience. And I think you can build it and still not get the critical mass of people that you need to have it be a success. It'll be a success. Success is the wrong word, but it's just going to be very different. And I think even the most optimistic and rosy outlooks on the future of trade shows are expecting that it's just not going to be what it was, and it's going to need some supplementing. So, as we talked about before, new platforms, this is a great time to get on new platforms. Candid, our software, is a platform for buying and selling wholesale. We love it. We think it's great. There are others. The big names in the field are Jure, Brand Boom, New Order, Fair, of course. We can talk about them for hours, and we have in the past, but again, making sure that you're not running up against anybody's non-exclusivity rules. This is the time to be trying new stuff, and a lot of times these introductory new user campaigns are going to be really good for you. And even if it's just a squirt of lighter fluid, that's not going to keep you warm all night, it could be enough to get the briquettes going, or at least going for another month until we know what's happening in July, because so much of the rhythm that I think everybody's feeling right now is month to month, and that's when bills are due. That's kind of, for your sanity's sake, there are certain things that you kind of have to put on, you get ready for the first of the month, and then you focus on everything else. And then when it's the 20th or whatever, you kind of get back up into it. That's very much being heightened right now by COVID. So who knows what is going to be happening month to month to month, but whatever gets you through this month, as long as you're not making bitter trade-offs down the line, it's worth trying. Finally, virtual trade shows. This is something that we at Candid are building one for the late summer, early fall. I've seen a lot of them out there. Virtual trade shows and catalogs are a mixed bag for sure. I know Paloma Wool in particular, not to call you out, but has a beautiful one. Check it out if you can. It's really just a stunning catalog that does, I think, as good a job as possible of presenting, a collection and a lineup and an offering when people can't be there themselves. There are always going to be things that you can't do. You can't feel it in your hand. You can't see how it moves. You're always, at the end of the day, you're still just looking at pixels of light on a monitor, and they're just going to behave differently. You're not going to get the wow factor of something iridescent that reflects slightly differently in each of your eyes. You're not going to feel it slither across your hand, but it's a level playing field. No one else can either. So whatever you can do, definitely worth doing in terms of trade show replacement and augmentation. And we will definitely blow up the channel when we're having ours. We're quite excited about ours, but we can't really talk about it yet. So watch this space. And then finally, just partnerships. As we talked about before, I think anything you can do to partner. One of the brands we talked about earlier on an earlier call did a really good job down in Bend, Oregon, of assembling a bunch of different brands and retailers together and just kind of creating this community in a moment where it needed to have one that opened up everybody to a lot of cross exposure that just wouldn't have happened otherwise. And I think that sort of thing is crucially important. And I've seen a lot of great examples of people in our community and out of it doing that really well. So that was number 3, trade shows, events discovery. The fourth concern on people's lists by sheer volume of complaints and ink spilled, childcare. Yeah, I got nothing for you. I love my kids, and it is so hard to work when we're all in the same house and so expensive. I think anyone who's making it work is either doing it with a child on their lap or, paying the equivalent of long distance call per minute rates to have someone else watch them so that they can have a shorter than average work week. But the good news is everybody else is too. It is the pan in pandemic means that it's everywhere, and everybody's expectations, I think, of what is appropriate, what kind of a call a naked 3-year-old can walk in on, or the level of which you just kind of have a hard stop when you have to go because the kid's crying or whatever is universal in a way that it hasn't been before. So I know, everybody who has this as an issue, it comes up because it is a big one. But here we all are. I love my kids. There's so many of them though. And number 5 is the last question that I think a lot of people have that they're struggling with, that is really topical right now, is how and when to reopen. People are open and closed in various ways right now. And the big thing that almost everybody's doing, of course, is, whether or not they're physically shuttered, they're really beefing up their online presence and just going hard online. That's clearly the thing to do. But there's going to be a time, and I think for all of us, wherever we live, some of us might have already had it, depending on where we live, where you are faced with the question of, I can reopen today. Do I? And if I do, how do I do it? There was a study going around a couple of weeks ago. I believe it was Mark Cuban. He hired a secret shopper firm in an area, I want to say Texas, might have been Georgia, that was reopened, and sent them in to sort of see how things were going, to go and actually get some on the ground data. Single study, small sample set, probably not super scientifically rigorous, but it did show something that I think is going to be a trend across the board, which is a little bit of what we were talking about with the trade shows, which is that just because you can open and your doors are open and you've got your policies for, everybody spaced 6 foot by 6 foot with their masks on, doesn't mean they're going to show up. It's, you need to, you're just one half of that equation, and arguably the least important half. You're the supply side with your store. And the question is, is the demand going to rise up and meet it. And I think a lot of times, you know, what we've seen in boutiques and restaurants and areas that have been open is, yes, I can do this, but the fear of, you know, a horrible disease ravaging your body provides a very effective counterbalance to going out and getting some new clothes. So people just choose not to. And I think that's going to be an issue for everybody. You know, I think a lot of times too, that the working at a place like this, like the essential workers who everybody claps for every night, the last couple times I've been grocery shopping, they just have the, you know, they didn't sign up to be heroes. It's great, you know, it's great to be recognizing the hard, heroic work that they're doing. But I think the consensus in the people I've talked to is that's not, we don't want to, this shouldn't be a heroic thing. Like, we want to do this when it feels right, and we want to do it on our terms. So that is something that I think we're going to be talking about. I'm sure we're going to have a dedicated Candid Shop Talk coming up in the weeks to come about that one, because it's starting to roll out to more and more counties, more and more cities, you know, where the restrictions that have been in place are being relaxed, and we're starting to really put that to the test and seeing, like, what does reopening look like? How does it actually go? And which sectors does it cut across? You know, who's just not gonna bounce back as quickly as the other people? I'm morbidly fascinated to find out, and I think we're all going to at some point this late spring, early summer. And another thing that one of our users said too that I thought was really interesting is that what's interesting right now is that there is, you know, there's a bit of a bump in consumer spending, and I think a lot of it is that on the heels of any kind of reopening comes all this pent-up demand that's suddenly being released. And it's, you know, it's when you lift the sluice gate and the water comes pouring out, it's probably not an accurate representation of month-over-month velocity moving forward, but it is a thing that's happening in these moments following reopening. So that is a bit of a silver lining, I guess, is that you do, when reopening rolls to your town, there's likely to be a bit of a bump, whether or not it's sustainable. So yeah, just to sort of recap, I mean, the big 5 things that you are talking about and want help with here and other places are these 5 huge problems of decreased order volume, doing right by your team, how to make up for trade shows, events, and discovery that isn't currently as available as it has been, childcare, what to do when schools are closed and work isn't, and how and when to reopen. And, you know, I think we're going to continue having conversations along all those lines. If there's anything that didn't make it into this, you know, please chime in. I think we're going to be doing some version of this that's probably a bit more of a roundtable than just this one, because it's just me today. But we will continue to try to work together to figure out solutions to these problems, because at the end of the day, that's why we're here, is to chat and to listen to each other and hopefully kind of suss out what's right for us based on what we see and what we hear in our communities. So thank you everyone who wrote in and who answered my emails and who chatted with me over the last week. And yeah, look forward to doing this again. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you again next time we do one of these.